Hello, it's Cisvolk! Time to enjoy card making with me! In this video I will make a card for someone who is retiring. On this Carla Creates party text stamp set there are some great texts, including one for retirement. There's one guinea pig stamp that is also perfect for a retirement card. And since I haven't used it yet, I will use it so you can see how to color that one. Also, I will be using the text stencils again, because they fit every handmade card and can make each card personal with a sentiment or someone's name. All product information and links can be found in the description below this video. You don't want to miss today's card making tips, so enjoy watching! For the card base, I will start by using an A6 piece of smooth white Florence watercolor paper. For applying color, I prefer to use the new blending brushes from Vaessen Creative. I choose a large brush for coloring a larger area. I will use Distress ink in the color Tumbled class for the background of my panel. When you hold the brush loosely and sweep it lightly over the ink pad, you pick up the ink. You can do this with ink daubers or blending tools as well, but you get darker spots or harsh lines more quickly, and with brushes it is much easier and nicer to do. By the way, the result is also nicer on watercolor paper than when you do it on regular smooth paper. On watercolor paper the ink can be spread very evenly. I make circular motions and also hold the brush very lightly. For the background I'm making now, it does not have to be completely perfect everywhere, so I'm doing it fairly fast. Deliberately I leave the edges white, so you immediately have a nice frame on the card. Distress ink reacts to water, so it is fun to make use of that. I spray a little bit of water over the colored surface and then I blot it dry again with a piece of kitchen paper. You can see immediately that the ink reacts with the water and interesting spots appear. I dry the paper again with the heat tool. While it dries, the paper will warp, so also dry the back side to allow the paper to bend back. Using the upper and lowercase text stencils, I will be stenciling the word enjoy. To measure the placement for the stencil text and the guinea pig in its hang mat, I used the squares on my new magnetic work mat. I prepared a test text on a scrap piece of paper that was 7 cm wide. So now I know that I need to allow for a text width of 7 cm. Then when I place that 7 cm piece on the panel, I see that I can start about 1.5 cm from the edge and still have another 1.5 cm of paper left at the end of the word. The stencil text then also falls nicely within the blue colored area. The guinea pig that I will stamp and color in a minute can sit in the lowest part of the card. I can now estimate where the stencil text should go. Now I see that the baseline for the stencil text should land about here. That means I need to stay aligned with this baseline for all letters. When I align the piece of paper with the squares on the work mat, I can neatly align the stencils later. With the magnets I can hold them nicely in place. The stencil is now positioned correctly. The E is at the right height with 1.5 cm distance from the edge. The text will also fall precisely within the blue frame later. To make sure I only color the letter that needs coloring, I can cover the required letter with masking tape first. But there is another way. I can also use a homemade mask. This is a laminated sheet where I have cut a hole. You can watch a video in which I show exactly how to make this, even when you do not have a laminator. I will color the sentiment in red, using Distress ink in the color Fired Brick. I am applying this ink quite thickly, so that I cover the blue ink well. I continue on to the next letters this way, always paying close attention to whether the bottom of the letter lines up with the bottom of the previous letter. And I check whether the bottom and side of the stencil are parallel with the lines on the workmat to see if the letter is straight. By working this way, I do not have to draw pencil lines. With the letter J, it is a bit trickier. Here I align at the top of the letter, and I certainly need an extra piece of tape to cover the opening that is too large for this letter. And with the letter J, you color the dots separately. For the O, I align again at the bottom, on the same baseline where the E and N stand. And I check again if the paper is still laying straight and if the stencil is straight with the workmat. For the letter Y, I check the top of the letter to see if the height is correct. When I compare it to the N and the O, and when I look at the position on the workmat, I can see whether it is straight. You can very easily clean the stencil by spraying it with water onto a microfiber cloth and then blotting it dry. This is just the easy base. We will pimp the letters, but first do the guinea pig. I stamp the guinea pig in the hangmat with VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto the same smooth white watercolor paper from Florence, and I heat emboss the stamped lines with clear embossing powder. I'm going to color with distress ink in the colors Fired Brick, Gothic Twigs and Tattered Rose, using a fine tip Tombow water brush that I have already filled with water. On a piece of kitchen paper I wipe my brush dry and clean, and if I need it, I also rinse the brush clean in a cup of water. For the shadows I add some blue distress ink in the color Stormy Sky. I later use that same ink as shadow beside the letters and some splatters for extra contrast on the background. Let's do some ink splattering and cover the text a bit to not have too much splatters on the letters. With a white acrylic marker, I add highlights to each letter by drawing a short line on every right top part. I here use a Posca marker, but you can also use a white gel pen. When cutting difficult parts, first cut it roughly. Then there is less effort to cut the intricate parts, like the hairs for the guinea pig. Keep cutting on the right side of the line, so the black line stays visible. I show you in real speed how I cut, so you can see how I hold the scissors and turn the paper while cutting. I also mostly cut with the open side of the scissors and hardly ever use the tip of the scissors. Cut one hair until there is a point where you must turn. Then turn the paper and cut the rest. When it is too difficult, you can always use the tip of the scissors or use a cutting knife. If then it is still too difficult, you can cut around the image evenly everywhere and stick it on the card with a white border. If you don't like that, you can cut all the hair off. The receiver will not notice a thing if you touch up the cutting edge with a black marker, so the imaginary stamped line stays visible. want to die cut a little sign later, but instead of cutting it from white paper, I want to give the paper a brown color first. For this I use the same colors that I used to color the guinea pig, and I apply them randomly over and around each other, making sure there are both light and dark areas. I also do this on the same watercolor paper. After die cutting, I use a black pen to make the edges of the die cut sign black. Do not hold the pen in the same place for too long, because it is watercolor paper and that will quickly absorb the ink, which could result in a too heavy smudge or edge on your die cut. With a black edge, I find the sign fits just a little better with the stamps, that also have black edges. This is an embossing pouch. With this you remove fingerprints from the paper, so the embossing powder will not stick to the paper, but only to the stamped impression. On the sign I want a sentiment wishing you happiness. By first placing the stamps on the work mat and then picking them up with the clear block, they become straight. By then placing the clear block briefly on the grid surface, you can check them. If they are still stuck crooked, then you can use the lines on the clear block to stick them straight, or do it again. I stamp with clear Versamark ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder from Ranger. With a black pen or fine liner you can accentuate the sentiment extra. Here I use the Fudenosuke pen, very useful for drawing fine lines and also a nice pen for writing beautiful letters. I glue the sentiment retirement and the guinea pig flat onto the card. For that I use the Glue Easy from Vaessen Creative. The sign I adhere slightly raised with foam squares. I adhere the post with 1 mm squares and the sign with a 1 mm square in the middle and two 2 mm squares on the sides. This creates depth and brings the plank with sentiment level. Unfortunately, I initially glued the post a bit crooked. Fortunately, I could still move it carefully. Because of this, some stickiness from the foam square remained on the paper. With a glue eraser, you can easily wipe that away. Spots where you went outside the lines, you can optionally still soften with a white gel pen. You also add highlights with a white gel pen or white acrylic marker. Always keep the same spot in mind, in my case the top right, to make it look rounded. With the blue distress ink I add shadow along all the lower edges and right edges of the letters, so it looks like the letters are coming forward. The darker the ink, or the thicker the layer of ink, the deeper the letters seem to lay. As I already said, you will find all the information you need in the description below this video. You will find affiliate links to the products used, a link to the Facebook group of Carla Creates where you can share your handmade cards and meet other Carla Creates fans. Also in the description below this video you will find a link to other useful videos that I made earlier. At this moment I'm very busy making card examples for the new collection, and those are becoming again super great with lots of fun card making tips. Make sure you have subscribed to my channel and tap the bell to receive a notification when a new video is online. Feel free to ask questions if you have them, or let me know if you have used these lovely stamps or stencils before or are planning to use them. Click the thumbs up if that works for you. That makes me happy. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!